Hello, my name is Ryan, and I am an Unreal addict. Terrible pun aside, my name is Ryan, and I am a huge addict of Unreal. I think it's incredible. The only thing that's maybe more incredible is the indie dev community. It's amazing. Everybody's helping everyone in the Reddits and the Answer Hub and tutorials, and it's an amazing community. And I wanted to contribute to that with doing my own tutorial video. Now, I'm classifying this tutorial as intermediate because I'm not covering the basics like what is an integer, or what is a float, or how to begin your first project. This is more meant for people who've already gone through a lot of basic tutorials, and maybe you're looking to make your own first small project or your first big game. And hopefully some of these might help you with your own work and try to bring some of those mechanics from your head into the game. Alright, so let's get into it. First up, keep your costs for casting low. Alright, as everyone, I'm sure you've heard and seen, there's a cost for casting. And you don't want to overpay on for cast. Oh, but this is just a brand new third-person project. Haven't done anything to it. Okay, so essentially, let's say, for example, you got a widget. It's your main HUD. Okay, and this guy's gonna fire it up. Actually, no, we're not even gonna bother with that. So in this HUD, actually, we'll go into the player and give him a variable for level. Okay, it's just an integer. And then in this HUD, you want it to just show this level. So you're going to bind it to his level. Now, some tutorials might show you that you want to come in here, cast to your third person character, get the player character, maybe promote this. And then from here, I want you to just get his level and then to text it into the return. Maybe you don't want it to be grouped or whatever, you do your settings and then return it. Alright, and this works, absolutely. But you don't, and you won't feel this in a small project. It's not a big deal, but say we were doing a management game and we had 20 something things that we need to pull the value of. This is essentially casting per frame to your character. Like, this is a terrible way to do this. One way to improve on this, if you take your player, do an is valid, you got two. This returns the question, and then you can branch off of it. But essentially the other one, question mark, it actually is both. It's the question and has your out pins. So essentially, if it's not valid, you want to cast it. Alright, we cast it, blah blah blah. We'll pull this off of here. Okay. So now you're doing this exact same thing when it's not valid, but when it is valid, then you just play it. There's no need to double cast to it. Alright, this will cut your bill a lot. But even better than that, you want to cut out all this crap. Go to your variable and just make this exposed, instance editable and exposed. Oh, I didn't compile the character with that variable. Okay, so now you exposed it back in here, say on begin or whatever, however you want to pull it out. You're going to create that widget, which we call the main HUD, and then just put yourself into it. Okay, so now it's got it without any casts. And then say in this widget you got a button, alright, and then this button's gonna say spawn an actor into the world, and for some reason this new actor, he also needs the player, right? So on this, you're coming in, you know, like spawn the actor, and I called it new guy, all right? And he also needs a player, and I mean, you could go into him, and you could, you know, on begin, he could cast to the player and get the player. I mean, if you only got the one player, that's always going to hit. But you could also just come in, put the variable on him, go for the direct object reference, and then just expose this as well. And then back in the HUD, where you're spawning them, just leapfrog it. Essentially, you can pass these as long as much as you want without causing any effect. As long as your very first initial cast, I mean, in this one we're not using a cast, but you may need to do one cast to the game mode, you know, and then just keep passing it around as much as you can. You want to avoid doing as many casts as possible, just like you want to avoid doing too many tick events. And the initial code we had here, this is basically a tick, right? So casting on it, you'd be basically casting on a tick, and you don't want to do that. So just try to think creatively when it comes to spawning things by passing the variable, or if you know if this one has a reference of one actor and it needs a player, you can always just play it through. Like you can say, if for some reason on the player he happened to have a reference to this guy, where I don't know how you got it, like maybe you got it from a get all actors or something, but you got his reference directly. Alright, you could just take him, you could do a set player, and you could just do a self. That's me. Right? Or like you could be like, you could set, if you got a variable in here for game mode, you could do the same thing. If you're not spawning it in, you could just pass it in. Like you want to get creative. You want to keep those bills as low as possible. Okay, that's the first tip. Tip number 2, structures plus. It's a arc joke. It's terrible. Anyway, yeah, structures. Structures are amazing. Okay, once you there's a really great way to keep everything organized. Do very few calls. Okay, we'll show you a quick example and how to use them as well. Let's say, for example, we're making an RTS or a management. Okay, so this guy here, he's like he's a worker. Okay, so now he's our worker guy. So in this structure, our worker stats. In here, we're gonna have you know, a few things like our agility, maybe our strength, our dex, you know, basic stuff. You know, we won't even name these ones. These would all be integer. You'd probably be whole numbers, most likely. They could be floats though. Anyway, you guys stats, and then you would have, say this would be the worker structure, and in here, say you want, he's got a name. It'd be good as text. Maybe he's got a first name and a last name. Maybe he's got a level. Maybe keep in here and it's an integer. And then he also has his stats, which is just a reference to the other structure. Okay. And then you get your worker. And this worker, just ignore, this is the basic movement stuff that comes with it. So in our worker, you're going to want to add the worker struct, okay? And then you just reference that structure. Okay. Now, if we're going to be doing saving and loading of these guys, you're going to want to make them instance editable and expose and spawn. That way, if you know, if we're remaking this level, and we spawn in our workers, and we got this structure, and you can plug in. And essentially, when you want to save, you just have an array of structures, and you just take all the worker structures and put them in, and then you go backwards by feeding them back into here. Okay, so that would be more for saving and loading. But essentially, so you got your structure. Now, how to work with the structure cleanly? Several things you can do with structure. Okay, so first off, you can split its pins. These are the things that are in it. So if you wanted to add to a level, like this is how you do that. If you want to, now what you never want to do really is set a structure like this. I mean, you could split the pins. Now, no matter what, all of these are changing, whether you fill them out or not. Like this is, you never really, unless you're going to be doing like a full structure to structure, you don't really do that. You're not going to set a structure like that. What you're instead going to do is you set members in the structure. All right, and then from that, you just restore the pins. Now from here, you can remove all other pins. Now this will only affect the level. The rest of the structure is going to stay intact. Okay, it's very important. Like this is how you do. You want to change one thing. Now, if you were changing two things, you could either have an additional structure, right? Say we need to change his first and last name or something. You could do that. So you have two of them, or you can manually come through and just remove the other pins that you don't want. So you could have two and one. Now, if you have a large structure, it's better to do 2 or 3 setting of individuals, because you can right click and say remove all other pins, where you can't grab 3 things and be like remove all but these 3. So essentially I usually do small things, okay? And then from the stats, all you do is you break that. Okay, and then we can pull the stats from here as well. Same as this is essentially this. You can from here, you can set the members. Like say we need to increase his agility. From this broken agility, we do an addition or whatever we're doing, plug into agility. And this is only going to affect the agility. Okay, and then the other thing you can do, say we were spawning this actor in. He's the worker. You can drag off and do a make. And this is essentially lets you make the structure by hand. So say for some reason you wanted to make them with random integers in each of their stat columns. Like you could easily just make the structure by hand like that on like a spawn or something like that. If you, I mean, this is a very specialized case, but this is how you can make a structure. I actually do use this in a couple cases when I'm making rooms in management games. Sometimes I might fill out like your name is the power room or what, you know, like that kind of stuff. And it's usually somewhere where you're in control. This is not something that's going to fire more than once if you're making generally. But generally setting members and splitting pins. All right, that's how you get all your things without actually affecting it. You just want to be like, you know, is this guy level 5 or whatever, you know, like you just want to do that. But yeah, essentially once you learn how to work with structures, it's a really good way to keep your code very clean with minimal saving and loading needing to be done. It's extremely helpful. Okay. Tip number 3. Widgets are gifts for you and me. So wrap them properly. Okay. Now this is something you don't really see in a lot of the beginner tutorials, which I mean, I get it. They don't want to, you know, you don't want to overcomplicate something, especially when someone's new. Apologies, I just need to clean out this spawn we have in here. But yeah, you don't want to overwhelm. However, when it comes to widget wrapping, it's only complicated at first, and then once you actually figure out how to use it, it's significantly easier to make well-formatted widgets. Essentially, you know, one of your tutorials might tell you get a background, you know, get some text, maybe, you know, anchor all those to center. But then it's like, so say we have you know, stat colon, okay, and this is like strength or something, like well, random whatever. Okay, this is all hypothetical. We're not actually worried about what we're saying. And then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to put these here and I'm going to line them up. And you're just going to eyeball line this stuff. Like, it's a brutal way to try to make stuff look perfect. I mean, look at that. It's pretty close, right? It's like, come on, you're close. It's difficult. It's not how you want to do it. Okay, this is just not the way you want to do widgets. What you instead want to do is you want to learn how to use boxes. Okay, you got vertical and horizontal boxes. Extremely helpful. Vertical box is just a list of vertical items. Horizontal is a list of horizontal items. And you can have any number of packaged boxes. Okay, so let's start with a horizontal box. That will show ourselves a little better. So we got a horizontal box. In this box, we want 2 texts. Okay, so you got this one, which was like stat colon, and then this is our stat. Okay, and then so you get that one line. You're like, okay, I'm gonna pad this away maybe. Left. Let's take 25 away. And then you're like, okay, so I need several of these lines. So you come in here, this really amazing function, wrap with. Okay, so we wrap it in a vertical box. And we can just take this horizontal box, copy it, paste it in. Now we got a second box. Right? Now we got a third box. Then hey, you know what? It's like, I wish we had 2 of these. Like you could then wrap this vertical box with a horizontal box, and then copy paste this vertical box in, and you have all 4. Okay. Now where this gets really easy for formatting and stuff. Well, okay, we have for formatting. Let's say. So this would be a larger one, and then this was your biggest. The biggest stat. So we'll put the colon. So if you want to get these perfectly lined real easily, just come in, justify these texts over to the right, take this text, wrap it in a size box. Okay, size box will force the size. So we're going to do a width override so that we're in control of how wide it is. Get that to where you like the padding. Okay, then maybe make this number nice and pretty. So 192. Now if we come in here, wrap this one in a size box, give it a width 192. Do the same thing over here. Wrap this in a size box, override 192 with the width, and then you can see, boom, 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 like that's tight. It's as tight as you're gonna get, and you're like, okay, so this is pretty, but I need a border. So you can come in here and you'd be like, okay, well, let's wrap this whole thing in a border. Let's take this border. Now you could size it to content. That's going to make it fill, but we're not done yet. We'll come down and say we want this to be a full black background, and then maybe we wrap this border in another border, which would be like, more of a graphical kind of cool thing or whatever. We're just going to put a color and go to green. Alright, and then this one will size the content, and then we'll come into here. Maybe we're like, you know what, let's pad, get a nice 15, or that's maybe a little too big, like a 10. And be like, okay, we need a little bit of space around for the black. Come in here, pad that out. See what I'm saying? And then you'd be like, oh, okay, well, we got to put a button down here or something. Like you just come in here and drop a button into the vertical box. And you can do any number of things. And the thing is, you can always work. You're like, oh, this button should be at the top. It's like, okay, well, you can move the elements around in here. It's like, oh, well, you know what, this button's too big. I don't want it to fill or auto. Like, you could size box it, shrink it down, put a text on. You can do there's any number of things. The only thing you need to worry about with this is, say you're like, okay, I hate this border, but I like everything else. You can't just get rid of that border. Alright, that won't work. But if you copy this one, then you delete that, you can paste back in what you had at any point in the design. So if you're like, oh, I don't like something. If it's down in you want something above in the tree, you're going to have to copy so that you can repaste in. But if you're just like, okay, this stat no longer applies, like we'll take that one stat out, come in here, this box, and be like, oh, well, I need some space below me. I want that button a little away from me, or something. This is completely hypothetical, but this is how you want to work with your widgets if you want to make everything lined up. And then you go to the very top and you anchor it if you're using a canvas panel. Which, if you're using like a main HUD, this is probably use a canvas panel, but that's another topic. But essentially, learn how to work with wrappings and the boxes. You got your vertical boxes and horizontal, and your size boxes, scale boxes. Like there is a great deal of widget tools you can use in here. Some of them I don't even know what some of them do. I've never even used some of these myself. You know what I mean? But there's a lot. There's a lot. You can put the background blur. Say you want everything else outside of what you have to be back, like a blur. Like there's a lot of stuff. Definitely look into your widgets. It can change the way you code. All right, what we got next? Okay, so next tip: actor versus object. Okay, I see a lot of people get confused around actor reference, object reference. Which is right, which is good, which is bad, and the fact is you're going to use both. There's no getting around it. Now, an object reference is a direct reference to a specific object. All right, so like this worker, if we had a variable here, and this is if you go to the worker and you get the object reference, okay, this is a hard reference to the worker, and from this we can get any stats he has. We can pull up anything off of this worker. We have direct reference to the object. Now this object is also an actor, okay, because it is an actor. Like everything's basically an actor, but an actor reference is a little different. It's not as powerful, but you could essentially, he could be put this object and go right into this actor, because that is true. He is an actor. But now with an actor, we can't get his worker struct, because it's just an actor. It could be anything. This could be any actor in your game, so you don't have real control from it. But that's where your interfaces. That's what interfaces are all about. Okay, so if you got this interface, it's your player interface, which makes no sense on a worker, but that's what we're doing. But essentially, so if this guy had this interface, and then in the interface we have we got a function called my function. All right, so if you got the actor reference, you can then call to the interface with a message. All right, and then what this essentially does is it just says, for this actor, which is this guy, run that interface call. All right, and then on your player, you'll have an event for that interface call. So wherever this gets fired, this could be in a widget, it could be one of your NPCs might have an actor reference. Like essentially, whenever the best use of it is if you don't know what this is going to be, it needs to be an actor. Okay, like say you have 10 different types of rooms or 20 different types of item pickups or something. The only way to be able to use one bit of code for all of it would be an actor. Unless they're all going to be, a worker, you can't use it direct. But if it is going to be, like if it's always going to be a worker that comes into a certain widget or a certain room or something like that, then you want the object reference, because you can do everything with it. With this reference, you either have to use an interface call to do stuff with it, or you can cast to it, but you don't want to, you definitely don't want to be casting if you can avoid it. The main issue, in my opinion, is that this doesn't really return. Okay, you can't have an output. I can't put on this function an output of like a Boolean for like, if this is like a check. If I'm like, tell this actor, you know, do you have enough money to enter the place? I can't have a no, yes. But this function could check money, no, yes, right? But if you want more code here based off the return from this guy, that's tough to do with an interface, because you would essentially have to, in this interface, maybe in this interface you'd have to put you put an input, sorry it's off screen, of an actor object. Oops, sorry, I'm putting an actor component, my bad. Just an actor object reference. So that way, when this guy, where he calls the function, you could just put self or whatever. Okay, you pass yourself through it, so that when he gets here, he can do a check. You know, like you're branch off whatever you're trying to check, and then you could do another interface call for like return interface call, and then that would come back to that other actor. I mean, we're inside the same guy, but I think you get what I'm saying. If you want the code to continue based on something, interface actions are a little trickier, because then you'd have to have another event down here, and like you have to wait for this. Like it's not ideal. When you want to be like, is something true, you want the object reference. You want to be like, you know, because then you can pull off of this guy. We can get his worker structure, you know, and then so we need to be like, okay, well, is this guy greater than level 4 or something? You know, you might need to get his direct reference so that you could check, like, is this guy level 5 or greater, kind of thing, and then run stuff. But if you don't need it to return, you just need to tell him, like, hey, reduce your item count of something or whatever. Then this kind of actor interface works well. I mean, interface in general are really important, but if you know exactly who's coming, like what actor's coming, you don't necessarily need it to be an actor and interface call. The other thing, the other thing with a direct object reference is that it doesn't need to be interface calls. This could just be my, you know, whatever event, and then from a direct object, we can call functions, and then keep going. You know what I mean? Like we can do anything. When you have a direct, you might as well be coding inside the actor. If you have a direct object, you can do anything. Okay, so that's like your main difference. All right, next tip. Tip 5. I got Lerps versus Interps, and like what is right. And I guess I'm assuming you know what lerping is and interping, because they're extremely powerful tools. Do a quick, I guess a quick rundown. Let's say we got just this origin, okay, like a vector. All right, we'll duplicate that. So essentially, what a lerp is, if you don't know, I'm not really going, I don't want to go basic level, but essentially it's just go from A to B over a 0 to 1. Alright, and the most common way to derive your alpha is from a timeline with a float. And the reason this is good is because you can decide, you know, oh, I want this to actually take 5 seconds. So you start at 0 to 1 and be like, okay, after 5 seconds, reach 1. So this is like a long lerp. Alright, and then this alpha would go in. This would be like, obviously this is a vector lerp, right? So this would be like moving an actor. So then you would have the actor. Now with the lerp as well, you can't use the actor. Alright, like say we were trying to use the location of this mesh or whatever. You can't use it for the starting point, because it's because you have to use it to set it over here, right? Like you want to say we'd be setting the relative location from the lerp. So every time you hit this, it would set it, and then your origin's going to change. So your lerp gets fucked. You can't do that. Essentially, as you come into this, you want to set his origin. Right? That's a lerp. I'm assuming. I'm sure you guys know what that is. But anyway, lerps are amazing. And where the main difference. One second. Pardon me. The main difference here with a lerp and an interp is that lerps are great when you are going to have the same amount of time. Okay, and what I mean by that is like a door opening, a drawer opening, an elevator going up and down. If this is always going to take 1 second to open the drawer, lerp is good. If it's only going to take 10 seconds to move floors, a lerp is good. And the reason for this is, say you got these two actors, okay, and we're saying like we're going to be moving from here to where this guy is. This is a representation, and we want that to happen over 1 second. That's great. Be like, I'm there, okay. But now if the 2 points are farther apart, and you're like using that same lerp, it's still going to take 1 second. The only difference is this guy's going to haul ass to get over there. Like your time, like this has to happen in 1 second. Whereas a vinterp, that's not the case. Vinterps can use, like it doesn't matter the distance they're traveling. They're always using your current position as the origin. Okay, and I'll show you a good example of when to use an interp as opposed to a lerp. And a good example would be like your camera. The camera's scrolling in and out. Okay, so I could probably just get the mouse input from here. Yeah, wheel up. So, say I wanted to do that. I want to have a cam coming in smoothly. Now the big thing here is like every one tick of the camera might be 100, right? And if you're doing this on a lerp, sure, that's great. But what if the guy scrolls 3 times and it's like 300? You're gonna either have a problem coming back into the timeline while it's already running, or like whereas an interp can handle that really well. Okay, so what you would do, you have to promote this. This would be your delta time, right, which is used in the lerp, or interp rather. So we're doing the camera. All right, so let's just say we had new arm, which would be a float. Okay, so now this camera has target arm length. Right, this is what we're dealing with right now, and it defaults at 300. Okay, so we want this to start at 300 as well, just so it doesn't fire right away. And then essentially I would branch, and I would be new arm versus this arm. Alright, and I would do a nearly equal float with a tolerance of probably like 10. This is, we don't really, it's going to be dead equal basically. Alright, so if this is true, we're not going to do anything. That way this tick's not firing constantly. And if it is, if it's false, then we'll fire the can't move. Okay? That way this lerp's not this, we're not using this constantly. And then on this, when I press it, I just want to get this. I don't want to, oh no, sorry. That's a mistake. You want to set the new arm, actually. We're going in, so we're going to minus. We'll take like 50 off. It's going to be a very small movement. This works more in like a top down than a third person or whatever, but this would be fine. So we would take 50 off, which would fire this up. Be like, oh shit, that's not true now. So it's going to fire up the cam move. In the cam move, all you got to do is we're just going to do, because we're doing floats, that's an F interp. Okay? It's a finterp, or however you want to say it. I'm just going to do finterp 2. And the current would be our camera arm. target arm length rather, and then we want to go to the new arm, and then the delta is the delta we pulled, and this is the speed you're going to do it at. I'm going to go with about a 2, and that's just about the easing. You have to play with these numbers. You're supposed to know this by now. And then from there, we want to set the target arm. Okay, so when this Lerp fires, and the beauty of this kind of a interp is it doesn't matter how far we go, it's going to be smooth. Like it can handle it. You know, so that's nice, smooth. Like, and that's like 50 clicks there. You know what I mean? Like this will keep it nice and smooth. No matter how many clicks I do, it's going to be smooth. Whereas if that was a timeline, that's bad. But if we were doing like a door opening, we don't need to tick a door opening. You know what I mean? Your door opening, you're going to just use a lerp over 1 or 2 seconds or something simple as that. So that's basically how you want to know the difference. If the movement is consistent and static, you're going 100 meters every time or something, lerp. If it's not static, like it's a bullet travel or whatever you're doing, like who knows, then you're going to need to do an interp. Okay, that's just a rough guide on that. All right, tip 6. What we got here? Pivot points. That's what I put. Okay, this one really frustrated me for a long time. As somebody who doesn't make their own art, you know what I mean? I'm working on it, but I cannot really make amazing 3D models. I use a lot of other people's stuff that I buy from assets and you know, stuff like that. Pivot points are a nightmare. Like, you can go into Blender and you know, set that. You can set the pivot point. Like, there's a lot of guys that'll tell you, like, you know, get the pivot point where you want. But you're not making it for me. You're making it for you and selling it to me. I don't know. I can't get you to change freaking pivot point. So you need to know how to work with pivot points, in my opinion. Now, let's just say we got, this is a representation of some asset you just got, okay? It's a cube. You can see where the widget is. That's your pivot point, right? Wherever that is, and you can see that's dead center. Okay, let's say this is a door. I hate the snapping, actually. Let's say this is like a door kind of thing. All right, you're like, this is my door, and you want it to open to the side. Well, because your pivot point is in the center, your rotation is from the center. Look at that. It's like, that is not it. Unless you're doing a revolving door, you got problems. You know what I mean? That's not going to work for you. Now, you could get a mesh that has a better pivot point, but let's say that's not an option. What you can do to get around this is you just stick a scene in here, okay? And I'm even going to call it pivot. And then you just take this scene, put it over here in the corner, all right? This is my new pivot point. And then you just parent the mesh to this pivot, and then you rotate the pivot in the lerp. Look, now we got a door. Alright? Now you can do anything. Now this works for anything. Okay? You can use the scene to be your pivot for anything. Say you have a pivot down here and you're doing that, but you're like, hey, all of a sudden you want to open like a crazy person. You want to do a revolving thing on it or something. Like, you could put a scene in the middle and use that as your pivot point. Just be aware that that's your pivot, and that when you parent, it goes with it. Alright, so like, say you had an additional mesh, and this was like, I mean, it may be a text render, make more sense, but let's say it's something on your door. It's a real big fat brick of a handle. Okay, I'm not gonna that's your door handle. Okay, deal with it. You know, I even change the color so it stands out a little bit. Oh, there's like no materials here. We'll put the body on there. Okay, so that's your door handle. You want it to go with the door. You're not gonna lerp both and rotate them or whatever. Like, you just attach that. Just parent it to the door, right? And then now it's just going to go with it. So if that's your door handle or your text render that says such and such's office or whatever. And this applies to basically anything you want to do. Like if you need your own pivot point, scenes are just great for that. Just understand how the pivots work, because it can be very frustrating when you set something up and then you're not getting the results you want. And it could be the pivot point. And yes, there are ways to fix a pivot in Blender. If you're the one making the model, just make a good pivot point. You can change a pivot point out here, but it won't keep it on the mesh. Like you can move the pivot points, but it's not a real change to the pivot point. You can also, if you got a more detailed mesh, you can actually go like into its bones, and like you can see the pivot point. Like there, it's all visible and stuff. I think on here you have to actually tell it to give you the pivot point. Shit! Now I'm looking at myself look stupid because I don't do this. I don't make assets, man. I'm not there yet. I'm working on it. All right, get off my balls. All right. Next tip. Tip 7. You're not limited to the default channels. All right. This is something that a lot of the beginner tutorials don't necessarily cover, which it's not complicated. It's just something more. You know what I mean? And you're already like, there's so much to learn. And they're already overwhelming you with what you're learning, and I get why they don't mention it, but it's hugely important part of making a game. Okay, and let me show you real quick. Let's say, for example, you're doing a first-person game that you're gonna look at objects and loot them like a Fallout. You know, like you're looting stuff like all over the shelves and whatnot. So you're gonna be doing tracing for objects or whatever. Well, what I would do is I would make a trace channel called Interacts, and I would put this to ignore by default. Nothing, without making any changes, nothing is ever going to hit that. Everything is going to block it. But then when you are ready, you want something to get hit by it. Like say you got this, this is a pop can, okay, and you want that to be lootable. You just come down to the collision. I mean, normally this would be an actor, but I'm just drag this in for simplicity. You go under custom, right? And then you just come down to interact and you say block. So now when you're back on your actor, shoot, I close my content browser. So back on our actor here, and we're going to be doing, say we're doing a line trace. So we're doing a line trace by channel, all right, and the channel we're looking for is interacts. And then your hits here, like this is only in the interact channel, which everything is going to ignore, except things that you specifically say block interact. So if you, and then it'll come up, that'll hit, you know, every time. Like it's a real good way to ensure that nothing's going to give you false hits on an interact channel. And then when it comes to object channels, this is a huge time saver in a lot of ways. But it's the same thing. You have the default channels, but you want to make some channels. I like to separate things. I'll have an NPC channel. I will have a player channel. I will have a bullet channel. You know, you can go up to 18 channels. I've never done that many. I think I've done like 9 or 10. But essentially, give your stuff different channels. And then where this will save your life, okay? So say we come into, this is our player. I mean, it's not, it's a worker, but you get it. It's a player. Come down to his collision, all right? Go to custom, and then change him from a pawn into a player. You'd have to do this on his capsule as well. Okay? You're no longer a pawn. Sorry, go to custom. You're not a pawn. You're a player. Alright, and what this is going to do that makes life pretty easy, let's say back in your game, I prefer to do it with actors, but you can do a collision box, okay? Or no, you know, we'll do a box trigger. Alright, they can just work with the level. You use these in the level blueprint though. So I tend to more use box collisions on actors, but this is fine for the example. So in our level, oh shit, I hit build. That was stupid. Stop the build. Oh man, my numbness there. Apologies. I meant blueprints. So level blueprint. Click on this guy so we get his reference. Okay, so you got the trigger box, right? Now, essentially, I mean, we actually need to add an event for it. Collision. I honestly normally do actors for my collisions, but whatever. So this collision, you want it to only fire when you decide you want it to fire. So you're gonna end up doing things like, you know, can I cast to the third person character off of this? Like basically saying like, is it, you know, like if it hits, it's him. If everything else, it's not him. That's not good. Or it could be like, you know, does he implement the player interface or something, like, you know, whatever interface we've set up for him. More overkill. All you really need to do is go into this box, right? That must have it. Yeah, okay. You go down to the collision, right? Go to his custom. Tell him to ignore everything except overlap the player. All of a sudden, the only thing that can literally fire this event now is that player object. Alright, and this works for everything. So like, your enemies are the only enemy object. So you don't have to be like, was this a player? Do I need to blah blah? You know, like this is the player. The player, if this overlap event fires, it's the player, like 100% of the time, because he's the only thing you're going to put with the object channel of the player. You get what I'm saying? Like, so it really helps you keep your shit really tight. On to tip 8. Exposure. Yeah, rendering. Now, honestly, rendering is incredibly difficult. You know, there's a reason that AAA studios have render engineers who are paid extremely well, because it's a very difficult thing to do, and it's something I struggle with, and I'm working, taking a lot of classes and stuff myself right now, trying to get better at. So I'm no expert renderer, but something I want to put out there that solves an issue I see come up a lot in the Reddit and whatnot that's not really covered in a lot of tutorials. And that's just lights, eating lights, essentially. Like, it's not so bad we get this directional light, but say we got rid of that, we're in a darker scene, and you got, you know, wall lights, and you got it all looking great, and then in the game, you pop a skill that maybe has a particle effect, and the next thing you know, all your lights around the room, they like go dull. It like sucks the light out of the room and whatnot, and that's your exposure. And the quickest, easiest way to deal with that, actually, you want to take a post process, right? You can zero it out. I like to, but you don't need to. But essentially, just turn the infinite bounds to full. This makes it, now it's the whole level. Okay, and this is like a default one. And it's one you probably put your post process materials. We're going to do outlines, and we're not going to get into that. Post processing itself is its own field, really. It's pretty deep, but just for simplicity, you go to the exposure, and you go to your min and your max, and you set these at 1. Okay, now there's no variance. Like, your lights will no longer eat other lights. It's a good way to just get the lighting the way you want. It's not, you're still gonna have a lot of rendering issues potentially, but this will stop your lights from eating each other. Now, if you turn both down, it gets even brighter. If you turn both up, it gets even darker. Right? This is like your minimum and your max. Like, now it can't get brighter and darker. Like, your lighting is your lighting at this point. Like, but essentially, you just want to go 1-1, and then set your lighting up from here, kind of thing. It's an issue. It's an issue that gets a lot of people. So I just want to put that out there. Number 9, enumerators and enumerators to text. Okay, enumerators are awesome, just like structures. They're amazing. Might seem complicated, but they're extremely simple. Okay, let's say for this example, we're doing some sort of sim. Right, this is our worker. He's got several different states he might be at. Okay, so we'll call this work states. All right, it's in there. The enumerator is essentially just a list of things. All right, so say his states would be like, he's idle, he's going to work, he's at work, this kind of stuff. Right, and then back here, put that variable on him. Maybe like my states or something. We call it worker states. Alright, so you got worker states. So now say you fire off an event on this guy. I don't know what you call whatever this event is. So you come in and you want to do something based on your state. Right? Well, they're the best switches. Alright, you come in and then you got the best switch. So like here's your idle code, you're going to work, you're at work. Like they're amazing switches. But then something else they're really good for. Say we had another enumerator for worker jobs. Okay, so this is like a list of the potential jobs your worker might have in your, say, factory or whatever you're doing. So say he's at the power plant, tier 1. The water works, tier 1. Now you see, like, I can put spaces and everything in here, no problem. It doesn't care. You don't need any kind of underscores. And now here's where this gets really helpful. Is it say, and this guy's going to have a widget, all right? And in that widget, you want to see what his current job is. Like it's going to say, like, my job, power tier. Well, you want it to just be what you put in there. Essentially, we take that enumerator. Okay, so we had it on this guy, and now both these enumerators, you would actually put them into this structure as well. So you have like my state, like, you know what I mean? Like when and that's where planning ahead really helps. Like decide everything you're going to want to have, and then you have like a really well-made system of structures and enumerators. Like you really keep your code clean. But that's what I would do. Is I would have them in here, but for the purpose of this, whatever. So this would be like my job, and then this was work jobs, right? Yeah, work jobs. Now you can take this job and go right in, convert it to a string. It gives you a user-friendly name of the enumerator. Now that is exactly what we said. Okay, like let's just say we had this event on queue. Let's see what's the default. The default is power tier 1. I mean, and that's the thing. If you're going to use it for this, you would also probably have a default of like unemployed or whatever. Essentially, we don't have a widget to show it in, but we have a print string. If you look up the top left, see power plant tier 1, and that will go right in a widget perfectly. You don't need to switch on it and then set up a string that's going to look appropriate. Like it just is appropriate. That's a user-friendly version of it. Like, so it's really handy for just listing stuff. And then the enumerators are also really good for like instance editable exposed. So say we're gonna spawn in this guy. We made a worker. We had a male and a female. They had a baby or something. Okay. So this worker comes in. Got his structure. They're not. Gotta compile. See, it's annoying. Sometimes they don't want to read because it's inside the same thing. Again, an issue, but often if it's in separate ones, a few compiles will usually fix it. But essentially, so it's a friggin' list here. So like, say we're respawning this guy. We got the structure from our save variables. It goes in here, and we're like, okay, so and he works at this job. I mean, he's, you know, you want to start him on the waterworks when he spawns in. You know, it's like, you know, you get creative. I mean, this is all hypothetical. Obviously, you got to use this for your own examples. But yeah, enumerators are a really good way to switch for states and like keep track of certain things. They're really good for switches, in my opinion. But yeah, enumerators are awesome. All right, final tip. Tip number 10. Oh yeah, okay. Tip number 10. It's really basic, but it's one that a lot of people don't really seem to know how to do. And that's just how to get anything that they want, okay? Like reference-wise. The key thing you want to know is how to get all actors of class, okay? It's a very, very powerful blueprint node. We're going to put this on a queue just so we have it rolling. Okay? So, let's see. We got a static mesh, yeah, random actor right there. Okay, so random actor, I'm gonna chuck him in the world. All right, what I'm gonna do though is I'm gonna put on the random actor. I'm gonna give him a variable. We'll call it ID. And I'm gonna put this as an integer. All right, so because that's instance editable, out here on our world, we drop this guy in. We have access to it. In the details. What the deuce? Oh, I gotta compile. Oh, sorry, shit, I didn't make it instance editable and exposed. Sorry, I forgot to click these. Give it a double. So, back in our game, put it on it. We get it right here. Alright, so say we just copy them out. We got these 4 doors or something, some sort of switches or like who knows. And then you can go through, set these IDs. Right, it's instance editable. You just drag out as many as you want and set the ID. Nice and manual, like you just have to keep that clean for yourself if you're doing that. But then back here, when we do a get all, we got random actor. Now, say there's only one. Okay, say we're getting the worker, because there's only one of us. Right? You pull from here, you do a get. This is me, because there's only one. There's only one, it's him at 0. And this is a direct object. It's not an actor. So from here we could get my states, get my job. Like this is a real object reference. Okay, but now for this we got multiple. So from here we would just do pop a simple for each loop. And then here we would just get the ID. Okay, and then we would just test that. And that could be either a variable for like what we're searching for, or like we can just put it in manually. I want number 2. Alright, and then if this hits true, like this is just going to loop through all of them. It's going to get them all, loop them all, check for the ID, and then we're going to get the true. And then we'll get the true was destroy them. Okay? Just so we can see it acting. So we're looking for a guy with ID 2. Let's see who that is. That's this guy here. So essentially you look at him, hit Q, and I kill. Oh shit, I have it connected to me still. My bad. Wait, what? Oh shit, look what see what I did here? I didn't connect the pin. I destroyed myself, right? That's what I meant. Like I had it connected to myself. Boom. Door number 2 is gone. You know what I mean? Like you can use this to get anything. As long as you got some sort of variable you can use to sort through them, you're good. And now if it was something like you got all these doors, okay? So say these doors are using an interface. We just made the player, so we're just gonna stick it on there. In the player interface, we have my function. That'll do. So on random actor, he now has that function. So say we go my function. This is the event. This is the guy we want to run. If you hear this call, why don't you kill yourself? All right. Back in the worker. So now when we loop through, I'm just going to send the message to the player. Oh, sorry. Wrong one. You want message. Oh, see, because this is a direct, we don't need to do it like this because it's not, these aren't actors, these are object references. So we can actually just straight call the function. But we have the interface call in there, but we can just do the my function. This still works, even though this is technically an interface function, it actually still counts as a function. But let's say this was you could do this for an array of actors without a direct reference, okay? But this gets a direct reference to those actors so that we can get access to check the ID variables and whatnot. But essentially we're just saying everybody run that. It's like boom, they're all gone kind of thing. And if that was say this wasn't a get, say we just had like an actor array, right? So say it was just like actors. We got just the adject actor object. This was an array. Say like as we are spawning buildings, all right, we're doing an ad and we're like filling this array the whole time, like just filling it up. And it's like, all right, okay, we need to do something with all of them. No, actually won't work. To pop a new one. So we could just say run the loop of this, and then in this we could do the message. So here we just are like everybody with this interface call that's in this list. And the benefit of the interface is that say this list had 20 actors and only 10 of them actually have this function. Well, the 10 that don't, they don't care. They're not going to report an error. It's not going to hurt your game function at all. It's fine. And we'll just go, the ones that have it will run it, and the ones that don't will just get that call and just ignore it. It won't do any harm. So it's really some cool shit. But yeah, that's basically how you can get anything that exists in your level. And then anything that doesn't exist that you spawn in, when you're spawning it, you already got it. Like take that, put it into a variable, put it into an array, do whatever you want to do with it if you need it again. But then you don't have to get that. You already got that. Store it on your player controller and then pull up from that or whatever. It don't matter. You put anything wherever you want. But essentially, if you don't have it, that's how you can get anything, is with the get all actors. It's really, really powerful node. That's basically my 10 tips. One final tip. It's actually more a piece of advice than a tip. Essentially, it's about the mindset. Okay, I see this mistake made a lot by new developers. Unless you're making, say, a visual novel or point and click, something where the key is the story or the visuals. Don't, I'll call this piece of advice. Don't commit to a piece of shit. Okay, and what I mean by that is just don't start by like, oh, I have this great story, and work on that and then go from that. I mean, it's good to have a good story, don't get me wrong. And it's especially bad to be like, I'm going to make this amazing character model and like this amazing level scene and like, oh, that's great. Those are great. But if you make all this cool art, then you get programmed and it's like, hey, you know what? My game loop is shit. Well, then you've wasted a lot of time. And then like say you iterate the game loop and then it's like, oh, you know what? Now the game's not shit, but the art doesn't fit the style of what this game has become. It's like, you got to start at the right point, and that point is prototyping and blocking out. All right, don't start with art. Like, I see a lot of guys doing, I mean, it's good to do good art, and if you want to be an artist, that's that's great. But if you want to make a whole game yourself, don't start with art, man. You got to start with a game loop. Get your core game loop, prototype it, block it out, and then try it. Is it good? You know, you're the developer. If you think it's shit, guess what? It's shit. But if you like it, it's like, okay, let's go phase 2, man. Then you want to get that to some unbiased opinions, because you know what, you probably like your stuff too much. You want to get that to some friends or family or potentially employees or colleagues, or if you can, like, depends on what the level you're at. You know, maybe make it a small demo for itch, although that requires you to go a little further. You got to put menus and, you know, a little bit of tutorial, or at least lists of the friggin' keybinds, right? Like, you got to at least help them. But if you're like, if it's actual friends and whatnot, you can just tell them what to do. Like, it's a little different. But essentially, get other people to try it. And if they're like, yeah, this core loop is solid, then go the distance. You know, then you start working on art and assets and expand on that game loop and, like, in meaningful ways. And, you know, I see a lot of people waste like a long time working on something, and then they never actually make the game that goes with that art. You know, what I just pulled up is this is a game I've been working on this week. I just started. It's just a little prototype block out. I had an idea to do fully 3D Fallout shelter, but with a lot more materials and less tedium, as well as you go into the shelter in first person, and, like, you're the one that has to fight off all the waves, and then we go, like, real heavily into the combat. But at any rate, like, I just want to show you, like, my kind of thing. Like, this is just the starting materials, okay? The textures, the materials, and the mannequin. These are all just made out of cubes, and this is more about scale. Like, this is all just scale for me, like, to when we could come in and make real assets. Okay, like, drag this guy, drop him in here. He's gonna come into the room, go to his position and his rotation, and he's gonna have him montaging the third person jump. Okay, because I don't even have any animations here. Look at him go. That's literally just to for the function. You know what I mean? Like, this, and, like, I have extremely basic widgets, so I can, you know, fill the employees from here. I can pull up their menus, you know, drag and drop them around. We can, you know, expand on these rooms, go up to triple size, you know. And this one, they just stare at the wall, Blair Witch style. I didn't even, like, but this is, like, just about the functionality of the room. You know what I mean? Like, there's literally nothing in here. It's just cubes, a few cubes, and I haven't gone, like, in some of these materials, like the worker lists, and, like, you know, there's not even words in here yet. These are just, like, some base resources in a structure. I haven't gone far enough to actually play test what I actually want to do in here with the coming in. I haven't even given this guy a gun or anything yet. Like, I'm a little ways off before I can actually try my game. That's Dave Thomas, King of Wendy's, man. The essentially, you know, teleport. I have him, like, so you can go around, teleport around to the floors. Because I might need him to do stuff in the rooms, kind of thing. You know, like, I'm getting set up to do, like, some sort of interactions. Like, I haven't done any animations, no nothing, no meshes. These are just wood cubes. Like, everything. It's just absolute nothing in this thing. But at the same time, like, from a coding standpoint, you know, we've already put quite a bit. Like, these are some different functions that are going on in the room. Making the worker info, add a worker to the room. This one's a little big. This is, like, how you take the worker out of my rooms. This is how I update the HUD while it's up. This compares the workers so that this one looks bad. Compares the workers so that you can kick the one who's lowest stats. We're gonna replace, like, on if the room's over full. This, like, remakes the list for when I do some kicking. You know, and, like, and this is one room, okay, and, like, there's code like this everywhere in this thing. Like this whole thing is comprised of code. Like the AI, I did the AI by hand, no AI controller. This is the AI stuff right here, and it's basically a series of switching on the enums and like picking if he's got to go to new floors, and if he does, like these are just debug print strings. These are like him going to different floors and changing. He changes his state to at work. At work, we come in, we switch on his job, and we switch on his state, like his slot in the room, and then we play animations. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's all code. Like, this is the hard code of what I'm trying to make happen. And then when I get it, like, I need to go probably another week to get it far enough to where I can play it and be like, yeah, this is good. Let's make some art. Let's buckle down for the next 6-7 months or something, and let's see what we can put in. But I may also play it, like get the mobs in and start playing it and be like, you know what? This is trash. Much like, I can, and then I'll add it to a folder of projects that I have that are trash. You know what I mean? They're fails. They didn't make it. They're ideas that just like I really like simulation management stuff, and I tend to go too far sometimes, and I make things tedious, and like I have to. That's where like I need people to test it to tell me like, okay, this crosses the line from fun into tedium. Like, then I need to dial this back and like reiterate. Like, you got to be careful. It's very easy. Like this one I'm loading up now, it's kind of hanging. It's a fail. You know what I mean? I have several. I have a whole folder of failed games with thousands and thousands of lines of code. You know what I mean? Like that's just the way she works, man. You don't want to. It's better to spend a couple of weeks prototyping and then be like, okay, it's trash, than it is to spend 6 months making art, then 2 weeks prototyping and be like, oh, you know what? This is actually trash. Like, you don't want to do that. Oh shit, I fired this up in the wrong engine version. That's what's giving me some massive problems. That was a big time mistake. We're just gonna close that. That's not important. This is another failed prototype, man. There's many. I have done many failed prototyping. Unfortunately, that's part of it, man. But I hope this video maybe showed you guys a little something. Maybe it'll help you in some way. Appreciate any comments, positive or negative, about the video, and good luck coding, man. Make some amazing shit out there. All right, take care, guys.